So another thing that we have to know, which is a little bit less important for understanding calculus, but you still have to know it, and it's a little memorization heavy, but it's how to find the derivative of an inverse function, f negative 1 of x. So there's a formula for this that you kind of just have to memorize, and it's 1 over f prime of f inverse of x. I know that's a little bit annoying to look at, but it's what we have to deal with. So I think it's best to see this in an example. So let's say we had f of x equals x to the fourth plus 5. Let's say g of x is the inverse of f, so f negative 1 of x. And we know that g of 6 equals 1. So now the question is, what is g prime of 6, which is the same thing as f negative 1 prime of 6. So what does that equal? How would we go about doing this? So what we can do is we can plug it into this formula over here. So then we have 1 over f prime of g of x. So we know that we're looking for g prime at 6. So we can plug in x equals 6, right? So then we have 1 over f prime of g of 6. And then because we're given g of 6 in the problem right over here, we can just plug that in. So then we have 1 over f prime of 1. And then if we go to f equals x to the fourth plus 5, right? So the derivative of that is just going to be 4x cubed. So if we evaluate that at x equals 1, then it's just 4. So the derivative is 1 over 4. Now let's say we weren't given this original point that like g of 6 equals 1. So let's say we had just f of x equals x cubed plus 3x. And we wanted to find f negative 1 prime of 4. Now we're not given any initial point or anything. We just have to work with this. So the first thing we want to do is find f negative 1 of x, right? So if we remember from our other classes, we have to switch x and y for each other, right? So then we have x equals y cubed, that looks like an x, y cubed plus 3y. So now we want to solve for what the y value is, because we only have the x value as being x equals 4, right? So we need to find the y value so we can plug that in. So now we have 4 equals y cubed plus 3y, right? And now if we solve for y, we get y cubed plus 3y minus 4 equals 0. Now if you plug this into a calculator and solve for y, you'll get that y equals 1. And if we remember about inverse functions, if we have the point 4, 1 on our inverse function, then the point on our original function is just going to be flipping the x and y values. So it'll be 1, 4. So this is f negative 1, and this is f. So now if we go back to our formula, we have 1 over f prime of f negative 1 of x. We can make that 1 over f prime of f negative 1 of 4, which is 1, as we can see over there. So now what's f prime of 1? If we go back up to our original function, we see that it's x cubed plus 3x, and its derivative is 3x squared plus 3, right? So f prime of x equals 3x squared plus 3. And now if we plug in 1, we get 3 times 1 squared plus 3, and that's just 6. So the answer is 1 over 6. Now, I know I said I was leaving the memory heavy stuff for last, so this is a little bit memory intensive because you have to memorize this formula, but this thing is really just memorization. There's not really a lot of understanding that goes into it. But it's inverse trig integral derivatives. So it's like the derivative of sine -1, or equivalently arc sine of x. So this is very rarely going to be on your AP exam. If it is, it'll be like one question. So don't stress about it too much if you can't remember this. I'll just write these out in case you decide you want to remember them. My teacher didn't teach them, but if you think it's important to understand these, then you should copy these down into your notes. So the derivative of inverse sine is 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared. The derivative of cosine -1 is -1 over 1 minus x squared square root. And then tangent -1 is 1 over 1 plus x squared without a square root. Then there's cosecant inverse, which is -1 over absolute value of x, square root of x squared minus 1. These are just very annoying to work with and to remember. They don't, like other things, they don't really help you understand calculus. They're kind of just something that you're tested on because that's what College Board likes to do. So secant is then 1 over absolute value of x, square root of x squared minus 1. Same thing as up here, but without the negative. And then lastly, there's cotan inverse of x, which is -1 over 1 plus x squared. So if you want to take like a screenshot or something, these are your inverse trig derivatives. And this is pretty much the last topic that you need to know for units 2 and 3 and the entirety of derivatives, the concept of them. The next 2 units will cover the applications of this concept. But yeah, this is a pretty good review before you start diving into calculus. So once you start learning units 4 and 5, then you should tune into my next video that I have about those. And hopefully I helped you understand this concept a little better and from a more conceptual perspective, despite all the annoying formulas that you have to memorize.